Chapter 1. New Orleans Cemetery. Night. "That'll leave a mark," was spray-painted in garish day-glow pink across the front of a 17th century headstone. The out-of-the-way and run-down cemetery was the perfect setting for a horror movie. The ambience was complete with Spanish moss-hung ancient trees, low ground fog, above-ground crypts crouching like intruders, anomalous statues that could be shrines to the elder gods, and the total absence of sound, except for a tinkling of zydeco on the extreme edge of hearing. And the characters, the complement of characters, inclusive of the astonishingly believable voodoo queen, were as terrifying as they were fantastic. So Petty Officer First Class Jack Walker was pretty pleased with himself that he made this observation while perched high in a tree far away from the action and armed with a sniper rifle. Only, this wasn't a movie. Through his scope, Walker watched as Voodoo Queen Madame Laboy stood imperiously on the raised sarcophagus behind a wall of bulletproof glass, her arms outstretched as if she were the puppeteer for the vast array of undead which were pulling themselves upright from where they lay on the ground. More than a dozen naked zombies clawed their way to their feet, their jerky movements as they tried to operate their dead limbs increasing the creep factor tenfold. Some of them still had Y incisions from medical school students' inexpert autopsies. Others were fresher, their mortal wounds still weeping fluid, their expressions full of surprise as if they'd just figured out they were no longer alive. Walker swung the long barrel of the Stoner SR-25 sniper rifle back and forth as he continued observing the scene through the loopholed Mark IV scope. The other 4 members of SEAL Team 666 huddled in the middle of the cemetery. Holmes, Laws, Yaya, and the new guy, Yank, stood roughly back to back. They wore body armor, including Kevlar forearm pads, Kevlar gloves, and Kevlar shin guards. They each held a slender 2-foot metal baton in one hand and a marine K-bar in the other. Their heads were completely covered with metal helmets, depriving them of sight, sound, and smell. If they were to survive, it would be by touch alone. The zombies were pretty much as Walker expected, shamblers, like sailors after a 48-hour drinking jag in Balibago, Philippines. Several bumped into crypts and were redirected. Walker's gaze was drawn back to Madame Laboy as she started to sing something in low, guttural French. A mishmash of red and purple satin covered her matronly figure. Her graying hair was piled high and infused with copper coils. Enough of her beauty remained that she could still command a room's attention, not to mention a pantheon of the undead in a southern Gothic cemetery. At the sound of her song, the zombies snapped their bodies straight and cocked their heads as if they were listening, which, after this reaction, Walker had no doubt they were. Within moments of hearing her, they were all staring with dead eyes at the 4 SEALs. Then, as one, the zombies moved toward them. Walker wished he could put a round through the Voodoo Queen's head. It wouldn't even be hard. Everything seemed a little easier after he took out the Somali pirates on heavy seas last year at over 3,000 meters. Except that the rounds in his rifle stood no chance against the specially designed glass. Still, he could figure out a way to put his rifle to good use. He sighted in, took a moment, and fired. Dust exploded from the ground between Holmes's feet. The SEAL straightened, tapped the man next to him, who did the same to the next until they were all alerted to the approaching zombies. Dragging and tripping, the undead moved faster than expected. With their arms out, fingers curled, teeth gnashing, the first wave attacked. At first touch, each SEAL used his baton to isolate an arm and spin his attacker. Then the knife blade slid along the back until it found the neck. A hard saw with the serrated edge, and the head fell free to hang by gristle and skin as the zombie dropped, lifeless once more. A male voice spoke through Walker's multi-band inter-team radio, MBITR, headset. Increasing